to set up a chair and you have no idea, so you go to the computer, you do a Google search, and you find out that there's nothing there but ads for different types of chairs. My name is Steve Maher. I'm a physical therapist and founder of Site Solutions, and what I'd like to do is teach you how to set up a chair to promote a neutral sitting posture for you or your employees. In the past 12 years, I've done probably 10,000 ergonomic assessments, and the biggest question I get is, how do I set up the chair so that my back doesn't hurt? And I'd like to teach you the 3 secrets that I've found to setting up the chair to work in a good neutral posture. Okay, but before I show you that, I'd like to just give you a little bit of background about who I am and how I got here. 15 years ago, I was a physical therapist in an occupational medicine clinic, and I was really frustrated. And the reason I was frustrated was I saw a bunch of people that came in, and I'd help them get better in the clinic, we'd send them back to work, and they'd re-injure themselves, and they'd be right back in the clinic. So I started going out and looking at the workstation, and what I found was people weren't looking at the cause of the problem, they were just trying to fix it. And the cause of the problem a lot of times was that they had no idea how to set up their equipment to work in good, neutral, efficient postures. So I started showing them how to do that. And then my company wouldn't let me go on vacation, so I quit. And I started doing this full time. And in the past 9 years, we've gone from me driving all over the place to 9 therapists throughout California that do ergonomic evaluations and assessments for companies like PG&E, Kaiser Permanente, Deloitte Consulting. So we work with Fortune 500 companies, but we also go and help my neighbor when he gets a new keyboard and monitor system. So what I'd like to do is show you how to set up the chair to work efficiently and comfortably in a good neutral posture. So the first thing you need to do when you sit in your new chair or any chair is set the height of the seat pan. When you're sitting, you want to make sure your feet are on the floor so you can move, and then you want to raise your hips up so that your hips are slightly above your knees. If your hips are below your knees, you're sitting down here, what it does is it pulls on your hamstrings and it tends to roll your pelvis back, and you tend to slouch in the chair like this. And in this position, it's very difficult to sit up straight. So what you want to do is bring the chair up so that your hips are slightly above your knees. And if you just did that with me right there, what you're going to feel is your pelvis is going to roll forward naturally, and you're going to sit up a little bit straighter. Then what you want to do is take the seat pan, the part you're sitting on, and actually pitch it forward just a little bit. Make it level or slightly forward. And again, what this does is it rolls the pelvis and allows you to sit up straighter. What we'll see is a lot of people have the chair too low, and the seat pan is back here, and so the seat is actually throwing them back into the chair, which feels kind of good, but when you go to work, then you tend to do this, and that puts a lot more stress on your back here. So really what you want to do, lean back in the chair, because otherwise this will tend to throw you out. Lift this lever here, rock the chair forward slightly, and then lock it in place. And you do that with your hips slightly above your knees. If your legs are going downhill, you want the seat pan to go downhill slightly. 1, to roll your pelvis, so you're sitting a little bit straighter, but 2, so that it doesn't cut off circulation down into your lower leg here. And the last thing you need to do is set up the back to support you in that neutral posture. Most chairs have backrests that do things. They come up and down, and they come in and out. So first what you want to do is set the height. This chair has a ratchet back, so you just grab it and pull. It comes up, and then it drops. And you can set it at any one of those clicks, and it will stay there. Once it hits the top, it comes all the way back down. What we see is that people don't know where to put this. It's either way too high and pushes on their mid-back, or it's way too low and pushes them out of the chair. So what you want to do is bring this up so the bulgy part that's built in here, the lumbar support, actually hits you in your lumbar spine, which is your lower back, right about belt level. So you bring it up so it's supporting your low back. Then you use this lever here to bring it in and out so that you can sit up straight and the chair back supports you in that position. And that is how you want to set up any chair to promote a good neutral posture. And the bonus trick is actually the armrest. Okay? The thing about armrests is they mostly get in the way. So what we typically see is the arm is way up here. You're typing here, you try and get to the mouse, so you have to come up and over. The shoulder isn't a weight-bearing joint. It doesn't need that extra support. So really what you want to do with the armrest is get them down, out of the way, so your arms are free to move. And that's how you want to set up the chair. And just like when you get a rental car and you sit in it, you don't adjust all the mirrors and then adjust the seat. You adjust the seat first, then you adjust the mirrors. Same thing when you're setting up your workstation. Set up the chair first, then set up the rest of the workstation. At Site Solutions, we've actually created an entire training program for managers and supervisors, facilities, and HR people. And we teach them how to do an ergonomic assessment. Not only how to set up the chair, but how to set up the entire workstation to promote efficient work and decrease the risk of injury. Thank you. My name's Steve Maher. I'm a physical therapist and founder of Site Solutions. And for the past 12 years, I've been doing ergonomic evaluations and training programs. And I've been going out and helping people work efficiently, setting up their office so that they decrease the risk of injury and maximize their productivity. And one of the big questions that we hear is, where should I put the keyboard, and do I really have to use this keyboard tray? So what I'd like to do today is show you where to position the keyboard, what the keys are to getting it in the right spot, and maybe you don't need to use this. So, but before I go into detail about how to set that up, I just want to talk to you a little bit about how I got here, who I am and how I got here. So 15 years ago, I was a physical therapist for an occupational medicine clinic. And what I found was that a lot of my patients came back. I just kept seeing the same people over and over because I could make them better in the clinic, but once they got back to their work, nobody changed the problem. It was kind of like having a pebble in their shoe. You know, they take off their shoe, their foot felt great, they put their shoe back on, and it started to hurt again. So I started going out and looking at the workstation and helping people set themselves up so they could work efficiently and comfortably. So what I want to do is show you how to set up the keyboard so that you can work in a comfortable and neutral posture. Okay? So the first thing to know is that when you're setting up the keyboard, it should be in a position where it keeps your wrist in a good neutral position. Because if the keyboard is too high or too low, you're going to tend to extend or flex your wrist. And if you do either of those, you tend to overuse the muscles of your forearm and potentially compress the nerves here in your wrist. And you can actually feel this. So if you take one arm, put it out like this, take your other hand, wrap it around your forearm with your wrist straight, and then lift your fingers up towards the ceiling. And what you're going to feel are these muscles here working really hard. And then if you drop your wrist down, you're going to feel the muscles on the underside working really hard. And then if you return to the center, you'll feel that those muscles really aren't working that hard. So when you set up the keyboard, you want to position it so that your wrist is straight or in a neutral position. So it's not extended or flexed to minimize the stress on these muscles here, but also to decrease the stress on the two nerves that run right here through your wrist. Okay? So what you do, the first thing you always do is set up the chair, because that's really the foundation of the workstation. You set up the chair to hold you in that good neutral posture. And if you watched my last video, you know exactly how to do that. But you set up the chair, and then you relax your shoulders, bend your elbows about 90 degrees, give or take just a little bit. If your elbow is too bent, you'll tend to elevate your shoulders. And if it's too far down, everything falls off, and you tend to extend your wrist more. So bend your elbow about 90 degrees, straighten out your wrist, and then you adjust the keyboard so that it's at about fingertip level. So right now, if I was going to use this keyboard, it's maybe just a little bit high. I'd have to reach up. So I would then either raise the chair, and the problem there is my feet come off the floor, and that can be a problem, or I can use a keyboard tray. Okay? So with the keyboard tray, the old ones had this big knob or levers that are actually very difficult to adjust. The new ones are spring-loaded, so you just push it from the bottom, and it comes up. Push the front edge down, back end up, make this movement, and it unlocks, and it comes down to exactly where you want. So again, relax your shoulders, bend your elbows about 90 degrees, straighten out your fingers, bring the keyboard up so it's about elbow level. Now, the newer keyboards will have a knob system here on the side, and what that knob does is it just changes the tilt of the keyboard. So I can tilt it way down like that, or I can flatten it out like this. And the reason you would do that is to again maintain that neutral wrist position. If the keyboard's really low and I'm reaching down to it, to get on the keys I have to extend my wrist. So what I can do is turn this knob so my elbows are relaxed and my wrists are straight. If I want to work with this higher, I can flatten it out and again keep my wrists straight like this. So when setting up the keyboard, you want to set up the chair first, then relax your shoulders, bend your elbows about 90 degrees, keep your wrists straight, then then re-engage with the workstation. One of my therapists says that all the time. But you re-engage with the workstation and then bring the keyboard up to a position that allows you to type in that neutral posture. And that is how you set up your keyboard. And if the desk is the right height, then no, you don't need a keyboard tray. But if the desk is too high or it puts you in awkward postures, then maybe you do need a keyboard tray. Okay? So for more information about how to set up your workstation, please watch our additional videos. But we've also developed an ergonomics training program that teaches you how to do an ergonomic assessment. Not only how to set up the chair and the keyboard tray, but where to put the monitors. Is standing really a good idea? What equipment's out there and how to use it? And then we put all of that together and show you how to actually do an assessment, how to look at a workstation, what questions to ask, in what order, and then how to identify any risk factors there, and then take care of those to protect your workers and help maximize the productivity of your company, really, and decrease the expensive costs associated with injuries and workers' comp claims. Thank you very much for your time. My name's Steve Maher. I'm a physical therapist and founder of Site Solutions. And for the past 12 years, I've been doing ergonomic evaluations and training programs for companies like PG&E, Kaiser, Deloitte Consulting, as well as home offices and just mom and pop stores. So what I'd like to do today is talk to you a little bit about where to put the monitor, because what we see is people are getting bigger and giant, humongous monitors, but then where do you put them? And they find that their necks are hurting either because it's too high or too low, or it just isn't right. It hurts their eyes and they're trying to get away from it. So what I'd like to do is show you how to position the monitor for maximum comfort and productivity. But before I get into that, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about how I got here, how a physical therapist got into ergonomics. And 15 years ago, I was working in an occupational medicine clinic, and I was helping my patients get better, and I'd send them back to work, and they'd come right back because nobody is really addressing the root cause of the problem. And the root cause was their workstation wasn't set up. And it wasn't that they didn't have the right equipment. A lot of these people had very expensive chairs, very adjustable stuff, but they had no idea how to put it in the right place. And what I found was there were tons of people out there that just didn't know what to do. They'd get a pamphlet from their insurance company, or they'd talk to their neighbor. We saw a lot of people that got ergonomic keyboards because their neighbor told them that would cure their ills, when in fact it really had nothing to do with their back issue. The keyboard didn't really contribute to their back pain. So there were a lot of well-meaning people, but there was a lot of misinformation out there. So what I'd like to do is give you some good information about how to set up the monitor. And there's really two things that you need to do. You need to set it at the right distance, and you need to set it at the right height. So first we'll talk about distance. Now if you read the literature, those pamphlets that you get, it'll tell you that the monitor should be about 18 to 30 inches in front of you, about an arm's reach, okay? That's pretty easy to do. You just scoot into your workstation, put your hands on the keyboard, put your arm in front of you, reach out, there's the monitor, about an arm's reach away, and I can see everything clearly. Now, if I'm the bionic man and I have that eye that can see for miles, this is going to feel way too close. And I'm going to start trying to get away from it, and that's going to change the mechanics of my shoulders and my back. So if that was the case, I would push it away. If I'm Mr. Magoo and I can't see that, what I need to do is bring this closer so it's in a comfortable visual range. And everybody's a little bit different. If you're wearing glasses, that's going to change. If you're doing fine pixel matching, we work with a couple movie studios, and they match the pixels on the screen so that when you watch a movie, it doesn't look like the person's, it looks like the person's actually there. And those guys, they'll climb into the screen, they'll get this close. Well, that changes your mechanics. Not only does it strain your eyes a little bit, but it changes the mechanics of your shoulders and your low back. So what we do with those guys is we bring the screen closer so they can stay back here and see without changing their posture. So the rule is about an arm's reach, but it depends on what you're doing, and you should feel free to move it. And one note about moving monitors, this is a flat screen, it's pretty light, pretty easy to move. But the old CRTs were huge, and some of the really big monitors, like some of the Mac monitors that are out there, the computer's embedded in the screen, right? And so it's pretty heavy and it's hard to move. So make sure that before you move the monitor, you can lift it and you use good mechanics to move it. And if you can't move it, get some help. So you certainly don't want to hurt your back or your shoulder trying to bring your monitor 3 inches closer. So get help before you do that. The next thing to think about is how high the monitor should be. Okay, and that depends on a lot of things. It depends on what you're working on. It depends on your eyesight, whether you're wearing glasses. And in our full training program, we go into the kinesiology and anatomy of working and sitting, and we go through a lot more of that detail. But as a general rule, what you want to do is have the screen, the top third of the screen, about eye level. So you're looking down slightly, because typically there's a frame here, there's a taskbar here, and you're really working in this part of the screen. If I'm sitting here and I'm typing away, I'm going to be looking way up there. So I have to look down, my head will follow my eyes, and my body follows my head, and next thing you know, I'm sitting in this position. So what I want to do is bring that up closer to eye level so that I can look down slightly and see the meat of the screen right in here. So what you do, if a lot of newer monitors have slides and they come up and down. If not, what you can do is get a ream of paper, slide it right under there. It's 2 inches thick, it's very solid, and then sit here and see how comfortable that is. For me, that's probably still a little bit low, so I might get another one and throw it under there, like this. So that now when I'm sitting here, my eye naturally falls about here, and I can see this part of the screen without holding my head up or down. And again, reams of paper are cheap, easy alternatives to some of the more expensive options out there. Sometimes you do need a monitor arm. Sometimes you need different things. Sometimes you have dual monitors. So there's a lot of other considerations. But as a general rule, you want it about an arm's reach away, and you want about the top third of the screen at about eye level. And that's the secret to setting up any monitor to help you work comfortably and efficiently. For more information about how to set up the entire workstation, please check out my other videos. And if you're interested in our training program, check out the videos on that as well. And what we do there is we teach you how to assess a workstation, how to go in and work with an employee to set up not only the chair, but the keyboard and the monitor. We go through the risk factors that we commonly see. We go through the equipment that we commonly recommend as well. And then we teach you how to look at the workstation with an assessment eye, with a physical therapist's eye, so that you can help your employees work as comfortably and productively as possible. Thank you. I'm Steve Maher, the Ergonomics Guy, and I'd like to talk to you about standing in the workstation. So we see a lot of people that sit all day. We saw a lady the other day had a 2-hour commute each way every day. She's been doing it since 1986, so I guess she's okay. But it puts a lot of stress on your body to sit. It puts a lot of stress on your low back, tends to round your shoulders forward. It can be very stressful. So I want to talk to you about standing in the workstation. And this is a WorkRite Sierra desk. And what's really cool about this is that it's an electric desk, and it will go from sitting to standing at the push of a button. So on the side, there are these little buttons. And what you can do is stand up and bring the desk up to a comfortable height for you. Now, when you do that, what you want to do is get your feet supported so you're comfortable standing. Then you bend your elbows about 90 degrees. Then you can bring the desk or the keyboard tray up to elbow level. So you bend your elbows about 90 degrees, and you just keep pressing this button until the keyboard tray is just about elbow level. What's nice about having a keyboard tray attached to a desk like this, because you're thinking, well, why do I need a keyboard tray if the desk goes up and down? The thing about the keyboard tray is you can fine-tune it very easily, so you can put it exactly where you want, but you can also use this knob here on the side to change the angle to keep your wrist really straight. Hi, I'm Steve Maher, physical therapist and the Ergonomics Guy, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about back pain. One of the big reasons that people come and talk to us is because their backs hurt. And the reason that their backs hurt is they're not sitting correctly. And what typically happens is the chair is way too low. And so they're sitting here and their knees are higher than their hips. So their tendency is to kind of slump back into the chair and round out like this. And when they do that, that puts a lot of stress on their low back. And over time, it starts to ache. And what that looks like is this. This is your spine, okay? And the way that you're built is you have your pelvis at the base, and you can feel this. If you take one hand, put it at about belt level and kind of push in, you're gonna feel this ridge of bone. And this is part of your pelvis. And there's three bones that form this ring. And then on top of that, you have your lumbar spine, which is your low back. Then you have your thoracic spine, which is in the middle, and your cervical spine, which is up here on the top. What happens is, when you're sitting too low, you pull on the hamstrings, which are the muscles that actually go from your lower leg to this little bump in your butt right here. And as your knees come up, your pelvis rolls underneath you. And as your pelvis rolls, your lumbar spine will tend to roll, okay? And then your thoracic spine, your mid-back will tend to roll as well, and your cervical spine kind of does that. And so you come into this really sort of slumped posture. So let's see if I can approximate that. But you're kind of like this, and the weight of your body is being held by the muscles because there's really no bony support. You can see how this thing just flops around. So what you want to do with somebody that's having low back pain from being static for so long is actually raise the chair. So when you raise the chair, it puts slack in these hamstring muscles, and that rolls your pelvis. So now, instead of your pelvis kind of rolling back, it's going to come forward. And as your pelvis comes forward, your lumbar spine straightens out, your thoracic mid-back straightens out, as does your cervical. And it comes into this position, and I can actually push fairly hard, right? And that holds that pressure. And that is a neutral sitting posture. So when you're sitting, by getting your knees down, you roll your pelvis forward and your spine straightens up. And that takes a lot of stress off of all these structures in your low back. So if somebody comes to you and says that their back is bothering them, the first thing to do is check and make sure that the chair is raised up high enough so that they're sitting in that neutral posture. Then you can build the rest of the workstation around them. But the first step is to set up the chair so it's holding them in that neutral lower spine position. Thank you. I'm Steve Maher, the Ergonomics Guy, and I want to talk to you about unilateral neck pain, and that just means pain on one side. And usually what we see is pain on the right side, and it's either from reaching movements or it's from using the phone. And one that's coming a little more popular, another cause of unilateral neck pain, is actually the dual monitor. So we'll kind of walk through those together, give you some ideas on how you can change things up to maybe make yourself a little more comfortable. So one of the big things we see is people reaching for the phone. Typically the phone is on the right side of the desk. It's way out over here. So you're putting a lot of stress on these muscles here to even get to the phone. And you can feel this. If you take one hand, kind of put it on your shoulder and reach out, you can feel how hard those muscles have to work. And if you're answering the phone all day long, that can put a lot of stress here. Then what we see is people will pick up the phone and start talking, and then they have to use the computer, so they do this sort of thing. And now they're trying to type, and if you try that maneuver, you can see that very quickly it becomes very uncomfortable. So what you can do is, one, take the phone, put it on the left-hand side. So when you're here, you reach over, not out, but reach over with your left hand, bring the phone up like this, and not do that. But hold it here, and now your right hand is free to access the keyboard and mouse. The other thing that you can do is get a headset. These are great because they fit over your ear, they can go over your head, and you can press this button and connect to the phone. So there's a little motor, you press this button, it answers the phone, so you don't have to reach out to the base unit. The thing to be careful there, though, is to make sure that the headset isn't way over there. So what we'll see is people are here, the phone rings, they still are reaching way out to get to the headset, then they have to put it on. So These are pretty mobile. Get them as close to you as you can, so when you're reaching for them, you're not putting more stress on your shoulder. So nice and close. So that's how to use the headset. The other thing that we're seeing is a lot of people are getting these dual monitors, which is great because you can spread out information. You got all this stuff going on, which is really good. The problem is typically people put their nose right here in the center, and so the things on the screen are left justified. So things on the left screen are way over here, and then they spread things out, and so things on the right screen are way over here, and it's kind of like you're watching a tennis match. You're looking way over here to way over there and going back and forth. So if you're using one monitor more than the other, slide them over so you're aligned with your primary monitor and you're not turning your head. If you use them equally, bring it so that this is in the center, so you're not turning your head. The other thing that you can do is unlock the screen so you can move it, right? And then you bring it more towards the center. So you're kind of using this area here and you're not having to turn your head nearly as much. So those are just some ideas I have for people that are having pain on one side of their neck. Usually it's on the right side because the phone is usually over here and they're doing a lot of reaching. So bring things in close, decrease the rotation, and then play with the position of your monitors to keep you from turning your head. If you have any other questions, give us a call at 925-377-0199 or check us out at the Ergonomicsguy.com. Thank you very much. I'm Steve Maher, the Ergonomics Guy, and what I'd like to talk to you about is right shoulder pain. And this is the biggest problem that we see when we go out and do evaluations, is people will complain about the right shoulder hurting. And the reason is they mouse on the right. So they type here, and then they reach for the mouse. And so they're always out in this position. And you can feel this if you put your hand here on your shoulder and reach out and down kind of over your armrest. You can feel how hard that muscle has to work. So there's a couple simple things that you can do to help decrease that reaching. The first thing is you want to have the keyboard and the mouse at the same level. So if you're typing here and reaching out and down, that can put more stress here. The other thing is with this keyboard tray, since the mouse platform is below the level of the keys, you can't bring the mouse in closer. You're always reaching out. So what you can do is get one of these. A lot of times I'll just use a book. I'll find a book that's about 2 inches thick, or you can just get a thick mouse pad and put it right here, and that raises the mouse up to the level of the keyboard. So now you're typing here and you're reaching over instead of down. So you can get a book that's about 1.5 inches thick or something, or you can get one of these mouse pads that will fit right here on that platform. The other thing that you can do is you can think about a different style of keyboard. A lot of the keyboards, most standard keyboards, have a number pad built in, which is great if you use the number pad. But we see a ton of people that never touch it. You say, do you ever use your number pad? And they go, what's that? So they don't even know that those keys are there. They just have ignored them. And they're kind of like the flyover states, right? So you got to go over them to get to the mouse, but that's going to put more stress on your shoulder. So what you can think about doing is getting a keyboard without a number pad. And so what they did is they just lopped off the keyboard, and you can see that there's a pretty good difference in overall length. And so you can put this on the keyboard platform, and if you have a single level platform, this one is a Workrite banana board, and it's built that way. I digress, but let me tell you, this is the banana board, and the reason it's there is so you can very easily slide the platform to left or right. So you can mouse on either side, which is nice because it gives your right shoulder a break from mousing. The problem is sometimes it's just a little bit too low. So they do make single level platforms that would bring the mouse up a little bit, and that works really well with these shorter keyboards because now your keyboard would be here and your mouse would be here. And so instead of reaching way out here, you're just reaching over. Everything's a lot closer, a lot less reaching, a lot less stress on your shoulder. So if you have any questions about this, or if we can help you out with any other aches or pains you're having at work, please check us out at the Ergonomicsguy.com or give us a call at 925-377-0199. Thank you. Steve Maher, the Ergonomics Guy, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about wrist pain. One of the big things that we see is people that are experiencing wrist pain. And a lot of it has to do with the way that the keyboard tray is set up or the way that the keyboard is positioned. It puts your wrist in a really awkward position. So ideally, when you're typing, your wrist should be straight, okay? If it's extended or flexed, you tend to put more pressure on the carpal tunnel, which is actually just this part of your wrist right here. And if you're working with your wrist extended or flexed, you tend to cut off circulation to the nerves that run through there. But you also increase the amount of work that the muscles of your forearms have to do. And you can feel this, so if you just grab your elbow like this with your wrist straight, there's not a lot of tension in these muscles. If you bring your fingers up towards the ceiling, you'll feel these muscles. And I've been working out, so you can probably see my big defined muscles there. But you can see how hard those muscles have to work. And then if you bring your hand down, you'll feel the same thing on the other side. So by having your wrist straight, it decreases the amount of stress on these muscles. And that's important because the muscles attach here at your wrist and here at your elbow. So if you're working like this, you put tension on the tendons here that can irritate your wrist, or you put tension here and that can irritate the tendons in your elbow. So again, it's important that your wrist is straight when you're typing or mousing. And the biggest thing that we see is that the keyboard is too low and people are working down like this. Or it has a positive tilt. A lot of times there's little feet under here, and there are here too. There's one, and there's the other. And so what they do is people will put their keyboard tray in a position like this, where it's actually coming uphill, but they're reaching down. And they think they're supposed to work below elbow level, which is good. It does tend to relax these muscles. But the problem is then your wrist is in this really extended position, and not only do you overuse these muscles here, but you tend to put more pressure on the carpal tunnel here. So what you want to do is relax your shoulders, bend your elbows about 90 degrees, then bring the keyboard up so the keys are about elbow level, and then play with the tilt of the keyboard tray so that your wrist is nice and straight, so you're not holding it up or down. The other thing that we see a lot of is people will reach out for their mouse, and the mouse is on this separate platform. And what happens there is the mouse is actually, the mouse surface is about 2 inches below the keys. So you're typing here in a good neutral position, but then you're coming out like this to get to the mouse. So what we'll usually do is recommend a single level keyboard platform. Okay? This is a work-right arm under here, and they have different platforms. The banana board allows you to mouse on either side very easily. You can slide it back and forth. But if you're using a short keyboard or you have a standard keyboard, the mouse has to sit over here, and a lot of times that puts you into a little bit of extension when you're mousing. So they do have a bunch of different styles of boards. This one is single level, and you would unscrew this one obviously, and it would screw this one in, but it works with the same mechanism. And the advantage here is now your keyboard is here, nice to put it the right way, and your mouse is at the same level, so you can reach over like this. And people always say, well, how do I mouse on the left then? First off, almost nobody mouses on the left. Even lefties don't mouse on the left. But if you wanted to, what you do is slide the keyboard to the right, then just put the mouse on the left. Move yourself over a little bit so you're here, and now you can mouse on the left. So by simply moving the keyboard one way or the other, it takes a lot of stress off. What it does is it creates space for you to mouse on either side. So you don't need the banana board unless you have limited space underneath the desk or something like that. This flat surface works really well. Now the other thing to think about too is deviation of your wrist. So here's your wrist. It will go ulnarly or radially, and that just means it goes side to side. So this bone here is your ulna, this one is your radius. And what we usually see is people trying to use keyboards that are too narrow. So I'm kind of a wider guy. If I'm trying to use this keyboard, I tend to twist my wrist into that position. And what that does is it tightens up these muscles on the outside of your wrist, but also can put stress on the muscles and tendons that run through your thumb here. I saw a guy yesterday
who was having a lot of pain. He was kind of a bigger guy like me, and he had a little tiny keyboard, and he actually twisted it like this so that his left wrist was straight, but then his right wrist was cocked like this all the time, and it was really hurting him here. So what we did, we recommended that he get a larger keyboard. So this is the Microsoft Natural keyboard. This is what most people think about when they think about ergonomic keyboards. And this is a nice keyboard if you make a couple changes. First thing is, when you get it out of the box, it has a little plastic lip here to give it that negative tilt. Problem is, it's usually too high, and again, it's going to put your mouse down here. So usually we pop that off, and then you take the pad off of the keyboard platform so that it actually fits right here. Otherwise, what happens is you push this forward, then you have two wrist rests, and you're doing a lot more reaching. But the nice thing about this is you can use it, you can sit here, it's split, and it keeps your wrist nice and straight. Okay? If you don't use the number pad, or you find that you have to do a lot more reaching to get out to the mouse, it sort of defeats the purpose. Your wrist is better here, but it's worse there. What you can think about is a keyboard like this. This is a Kinesis Freestyle keyboard, and what they've done is they put a little joint in the center so you can adjust the width, but also the tilting. It has a little mechanism here that I'll show you in a minute that allows you to change the angles. So now your wrist is in a good neutral position when you're typing, and then you're reaching over to the mouse, but you're not reaching over the number pad, so it's closer. What we find here is that if you use something like a little pad like this, and you put it here, it raises the mouse closer to the level of the keys. So again, you're reaching across instead of down. So just some little things you can do to change the angle of the keyboard or the width of the keyboard to keep your wrist in that nice neutral position so you're not increasing stress when you're typing or mousing. If you have any more questions, please contact us at theergonomicsguy.com or give us a call, at 925-377-0199. Thank you.
Steve Maher, physical therapist and founder of Site Solutions, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the various pieces of equipment that we'll see in the office and how to adjust those to make you comfortable. I'm here at one of my clients' Ergo Labs, which is great. It's down in the basement, hence the echo. But what they do is they have a whole room full of chairs over there, and then they have a whole bunch of different products. So when somebody needs something, we can bring them down here to the basement and actually play with it, so people can put their hands on the keyboards and the mice and see what's going to work for them, so that before they purchase it, people get a chance to kind of feel it and touch it. But what I'd like to do now is just talk about the different things that you might need to order for your clients or your staff, and show you how those work and why they might be beneficial. So this is a typical desk. It's set at about 30 inches, and if you're tall enough to use the desk, that's great. But for most people, it's just a little bit high. So when you go to type, you're reaching up a little bit, you're reaching out, you're putting a lot of pressure on your wrists. So what we will recommend if the desk is too high is a keyboard tray. This is a WorkRite keyboard tray. It's very similar to the human scale keyboard tray. 3M makes one that's similar. What you're looking for in a keyboard tray is adjustability. You want to be able to move it up and down so it fits you and your needs. You want to make sure that it's all one level so that you're not reaching up or down for the mouse. And you want to make sure that it moves easily so you can get it out of the way if you need to. Now, we typically think of keyboard trays when we're working with women more than men. And the thing is, men wear the same shoes every day, so they're the same height. Where women will wear heels, and if you're wearing a 3 or 4 inch heel, that makes you 3 or 4 inches higher. You're going to be sitting taller in the chair in that neutral posture, and that will make your keyboard lower and put you in some awkward posture. So a lot of times women use the keyboard tray more than men, but it will work for both. When you're looking at a keyboard tray, you want to make sure that it adjusts up and down first and foremost. With these, most of the modern mechanisms, you just push it from the bottom and it raises up. You push the front edge down, lift the back edge up, that unlocks it, and the whole thing will drop. And so what you do remember, is relax your shoulders, bend your elbows about 90 degrees, bring the keyboard tray up so that it's about elbow level, about fingertip level. So you're not bending your wrist one way or the other to access the keys. The newer keyboard trays, and I don't think you can see this, but there's a knob coming off over here on this side. And what that does is that adjusts the tilt. We see a lot of people that just push on these things and then it doesn't work and they get mad and they kick it and they bump it and it magically moves. So this knob right here just does the tilt. The height mechanism is controlled by the arm right here, but by pushing it down, that disengages the mechanism and you can bring this down. This knob just does the tilt. So you bring it up to where it's comfortable for you, then you use the tilt lever knob to change that angle to keep your wrist straight. The idea here is you want to relax your shoulders, bend your elbows 90 degrees, keep your wrist straight so you're not extending or flexing, which is going to overuse the muscles of your forearm, but also potentially put pressure on the nerves here in your wrist. So you just relax your shoulders, bend your elbows, keyboard should be just about there, and maybe for me flatten out a little bit. A lot of these keyboards come with wrist rests. I just happen to have them right here. And what's nice about these is they have these holes. This will just pop in there. So if you want to use the wrist rest, that's great. A lot of times it helps keep the wrist really neutral when you're typing. But you want to know that if you want to, you can pop it off, bring this closer. You can also move it. We see a lot of people that will mouse on the right. They don't like the wrist rest here. There's a smaller piece that would fit over here. Or even if you're going to mouse on the left, you can move your keyboard to the right and then have space here to mouse. So this wrist rest will move side to side and you can take it off. And that becomes important if you're using a natural keyboard, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, that has a swoop to it. It won't sit straight against the edge of the wrist rest. And so by popping this off, the keyboard will sit just a little bit closer. The other thing about the keyboard tray that's really important is you want to make sure that it's single level. So a lot of the keyboard trays have boards that slide out from underneath, or they have mouse over platforms where there's a little platform that swings in over the number pad. And the idea is it's getting the mouse closer. But in reality, what it does is it tends to lower the mouse below the level of the keyboard, causing you to reach out and down. So if we look at the keyboard tray over here, and we're going to do some fancy camera work here. This keyboard here is called a banana board, and it has the same mechanism. We just pull it up from the bottom and it comes up. We push the front edge and it goes down, and it has the tilt knob right here on the side. So we position that to where it's comfortable for us. And it has this board underneath that's shaped like a banana, hence the name. And that allows you to slide the mousing platform from one side to the other. So you can mouse with either your left or your right hand. So the idea is that you can mouse over here for a while, you can mouse over here for a while. The problem is that it holds the mouse approximately 2 inches lower than the keyboard. So when you're typing like this, when you go to reach for the mouse, you're reaching over and down. And when you do that, you tend to lean on this little bone right here, and that can compress the ulnar nerve that runs up into these fingers. So if the mouse is way down here, potentially you're putting your wrist in a more awkward position, but you're also compressing the nerves that run through the wrist. And that's why we like a single level platform, just like this, and there's stuff all over, which we will be showing you shortly. But by having the keyboard and the mouse at the same level, where's my mouse? You're typing here, you're reaching over, you can keep that negative tilt and you're not putting a lot of pressure on your wrist. So when thinking about getting a keyboard platform, think about the following things. You want to make sure that it's easy to adjust up and down. There aren't knobs and levers underneath. Some of the older ones had buttons and things underneath that you can never find, or they had screw mechanisms that you had to tighten. So you want to make sure that the keyboard tray is very easy to adjust up and down. You can set the tilt so that it's comfortable for you, and also you have a single level platform so that the mouse is at the same height as the keyboard. Thank you. Hi, I'm Steve Maher, physical therapist and founder of Site Solutions, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the various pieces of equipment that we'll see in the office and how to adjust those to make you comfortable. I'm I'm here at one of my clients' Ergo Labs, which is great. It's down in the basement, hence the echo. But what they do is they have a whole room full of chairs over there, and then they have a whole bunch of different products. So when somebody needs something, we can bring them down here to the basement and actually play with it, and so people can put their hands on the keyboards and the mice and see what's going to work for them, so that before they purchase it, people get a chance to kind of feel it and touch it. But what I'd like to do now is just talk about the different things that you might need to order for your clients or your staff, and show you how those work and why they might be beneficial. So this is a typical desk. It's set at about 30 inches, and if you're tall enough to use the desk, that's great. But for most people, it's just a little bit high. So when you go to type, you're reaching up a little bit, you're reaching out, you're putting a lot of pressure on your wrists. So what we will recommend if the desk is too high is a keyboard tray. This is a WorkRite keyboard tray. It's very similar to the human scale keyboard tray. 3M makes one that's similar. What you're looking for in a keyboard tray is adjustability. You want to be able to move it up and down so it fits you and your needs. You want to make sure that it's all one level so that you're not reaching up or down for the mouse. And you want to make sure that it moves easily so you can get it out of the way if you need to. Now, we typically think of keyboard trays when we're working with women more than men. And the thing is, men wear the same shoes every day, so they're the same height. Where women will wear heels, and if you're wearing a 3 or 4 inch heel, that makes you 3 or 4 inches higher. You're going to be sitting taller in the chair in that neutral posture, and that will make your keyboard lower and put you in some awkward posture. So a lot of times women use the keyboard tray more than men, but it will work for both. When you're looking at a keyboard tray, you want to make sure that it adjusts up and down first and foremost. With these, most of the modern mechanisms, you just push it from the bottom and it raises up. You push the front edge down, lift the back edge up, that unlocks it, and the whole thing will drop. And so what you do, remember, is relax your shoulders, bend your elbows about 90 degrees, bring the keyboard tray up so that it's about elbow level or about fingertip level. So you're not bending your wrist one way or the other to access the keys. The newer keyboard trays, and I don't think you can see this, but there's a knob coming off over here on this side. And what that does is that adjusts the tilt. We see a lot of people that just push on these things and then it doesn't work and they get mad and they kick it and they bump it and it magically moves. So this knob right here just does the tilt. The height mechanism is controlled by the arm right here, but by pushing it down, that disengages the mechanism and you can bring this down. This knob just does the tilt. So you bring it up to where it's comfortable for you, then you use the tilt left knob to change that angle to keep your wrist straight. The idea here is you want to relax your shoulders, bend your elbows 90 degrees, keep your wrist straight so you're not extending or flexing, which is going to overuse the muscles of your forearm, but also potentially put pressure on the nerves in your wrist. So you just relax your shoulders, bend your elbows, keyboard should be just about there, and maybe for me, flatten it out a little bit. A lot of these keyboards come with wrist rests. I just happen to have one right here. And what's nice about these is they have these holes. This will just pop in there. So if you want to use the wrist rest, that's great. A lot of times it helps keep the wrist really neutral when you're typing. But you want to know that if you want to, you can pop it off, bring this closer. You can also move it. We see a lot of people that will mouse on the right. They don't like the wrist rest here. There's a smaller piece that would fit over here. Or even if you're going to mouse on the left, you can move your keyboard to the right and then have space here to mouse. So this wrist rest will move side to side and you can take it off. And that becomes important if you're using a natural keyboard, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, that has a swoop to it. It won't sit straight against the edge of the wrist rest. And so by popping this off, the keyboard will sit just a little bit closer. The other thing about the keyboard tray that's really important is you want to make sure that it's single level. So a lot of the keyboard trays have boards that slide out from underneath, or they have mouse over platforms where there's a little platform that swings in over the number pad. And the idea is it's getting the mouse closer. But in reality, what it does is it tends to lower the mouse below the level of the keyboard, causing you to reach out and down. So if we look at the keyboard tray over here, and we're going to do some fancy camera work here,
This keyboard here is called a banana board, and it has the same mechanism. We just pull it up from the bottom and it comes up. We push the front edge and it goes down, and it has the tilt knob right here on the side. So we position that to where it's comfortable for us. And it has this board underneath that's shaped like a banana, hence the name. And that allows you to slide the mousing platform from one side to the other. So you can mouse with either your left or your right hand. So the idea is that you can mouse over here for a while, you can mouse over here for a while. The problem is that it holds the mouse approximately 2 inches lower than the keyboard. So when you're typing like this, when you go to reach for the mouse, you're reaching over and down. And when you do that, you tend to lean on this little bone right here, and that can compress the ulnar nerve that runs up into these fingers. So if the mouse is way down here, potentially you're putting your wrist in a more awkward position, but you're also compressing the nerves as they run through the wrist. And that's why we like a single level platform, just like this, and there's stuff all over, which we will be showing you shortly. But by having the keyboard and the mouse at the same level, where's my mouse? You're typing here, you're reaching over, you can keep that negative tilt, and you're not putting a lot of pressure on your wrist. So when thinking about getting a keyboard platform, think about the following things. You want to make sure that it's easy to adjust up and down. There aren't knobs and levers underneath. Some of the older ones had buttons and things underneath that you could never find, or they had screw mechanisms that you had to tighten. So you want to make sure that the keyboard tray is very easy to adjust up and down. You can set the tilt so that it's comfortable for you, and also you have a single level platform so that the mouse is at the same height as the keyboard. Thank you. I'm Steve Maher, the Ergonomics Guy, and I'm here to talk to you about how to set up your monitors, because what I've been seeing is people don't come and ask me where to put their monitors. They will call me and ask me what they can do about their neck pain. And so I started thinking about it, and what I want to do is develop a series of short videos for you on how to take care of different parts of your body, and if this is the symptom, this is the probable cause, and here are some things you can do to make it feel a little bit better. So the first thing is, we see a lot of people that are complaining about neck pain. And if your neck hurts in the middle, right in the center, it's usually because of the position of the monitors. So when you're sitting, the first thing is you set up your chair to hold you in a good neutral posture. Then you set the position of the monitors. You should have your eyes at about the top third of the screen, so your head can be balanced over your shoulders and you're not looking up and down. If you're looking up to the monitors, you can strain the muscles here, or if the monitors are too low and you're looking down, you're putting a lot of stress here as well. Your head weighs as much as a bowling ball, pretty heavy things. So if you're looking down all day, what happens is you put stress on these muscles and then you tend to crumple up like this, and ultimately that's going to put more stress on your low back. So what you want to do is position the monitors so that your head is balanced over your shoulders and you can see the screen comfortably. Now, some caveats here. If you're a touch typist and you don't need to look at the keys when you type, bring it up here. If you're like me and you have to hunt and peck to find the keys, you may want to bring this down a little bit so that you can see the keys in the monitor and you're not a bobblehead. The other thing that we're seeing is a lot of times people are turning their heads, so you want to make sure that your primary monitor is aligned with you. So if you slide this over a little bit, I can look at my primary monitor and very easily glance at this one, but I'm not turning back and forth all day long. If you're using them both equally, put the split at nose level. If you're using one more than the other, slide it one way or the other. For more information about ergonomics and how to set up your workstation, please check out our website, theergonomicsguy.com, or give us a call at 925-377-0199. Thank you. Steve Maher, physical therapist and founder of Site Solutions, and I want to talk to you a little bit about keyboards, when you would use different styles,
and how to choose the right one for the people that you might be working with. This is a standard Dell keyboard. It has your character keys here, your number pad over here. This is what comes with Dell computers, HP. This is the standard. This is what everybody has. This works for most people. When they're typing, their shoulders are relaxed, wrists are straight and not really deviated outward, and your hands are on the home row right here. If you're like me and you're a little bit larger though, what can happen is when you go to reach for the home row, your wrists tend to ulnarly deviate. You twist your wrist out just a little bit like that, which puts a lot of stress on the outside of your forearm and wrist. It actually will bring your elbows in and your shoulders up. So if the keyboard's small, it can cause discomfort in the shoulder and neck because you're trying to type like this. There are different styles of keyboard that are a little bit wider. Traditionally, what we think of when you start thinking wider keyboards is you think of the natural keyboard, which is made by Microsoft, okay? And this is the swoopy one, okay? It kind of looks like a Nike swoosh. But what they've done is they've just taken the two halves of the keyboard and completely separated them. So now they're open. So now when I relax my shoulders, bring my hands up, they're more in line with my wrist, so my wrist is a little bit straighter. So when I'm typing, I don't have to twist my wrist like this. There's a couple of things about this keyboard though. One is the distance between the keys is set, and the tenting, the amount of tilt, is also set. So if it works for me, that's great, but if I'm wider, or I'm just a little bit narrower, or I don't like the tilt, it's not going to work for me. So there's different keyboards, there's different ways around that. With this keyboard, just a couple other things. One is, since it does have this big swoop to it, it doesn't fit against the standard keyboard platform, where the wrist rest is straight. And if you have a straight wrist rest on a swoopy shape or a non-straight keyboard, what happens a lot of the time is it pushes the keyboard back. So now you're reaching over your standard wrist rest, over the wrist rest that's built into the keyboard and reaching for the keys, and that's forcing you kind of forward. So if you use a keyboard like this, you can get a wrist rest that fits this. If you have the older style, the newer ones actually have a rubber pad that's built in, so it's a little bit softer. If you're going to use it with a keyboard tray though, take out the wrist rest so that you can bring the entire keyboard closer and you can do it with it like this, so it's a lot closer and you're not reaching. But if this doesn't do it for you, if it's not quite wide enough, if it's too wide, too thick, what we will do is we'll move to what's called a Gold Touch keyboard, okay? And what's different about this is that the two halves are adjustable. So it has a lever up here on the top and a little ball bearing right there. If you lift this up, the entire keyboard will separate and bend and creak. So you can set that to where it's comfortable for you, and then you just lock it down by pushing the lever down. What you can do, so the way that works is you open up the lever, you would open this and maybe tent it a little bit, lock it back down so that the width of the keyboard matches the width of your shoulders, so that when you reach up from the side, your wrist stays straight and you're not deviating one way or the other. And then you set the tent so that it fits your hand. So you're not turning your hand all the way down to use the keyboard on the dust surface, but you're not at some artificial angle. It's where it's comfortable for you. The other real advantage to this type of keyboard is that it doesn't have a number pad right here. With the traditional keyboard, right here, the number pad is there, and so when you're working and you have to reach for the mouse, you're reaching over the number pad and over here to get to the mouse. So you're doing a lot more reaching than some people can handle. So we see a lot of people with right shoulder, right wrist pain because they're reaching over keys that they don't use to get to the numbers. The other thing that happens a lot with the standard keyboard is you're not sure where to place it. So if you set the keyboard so that the center of the character keys, which is the B key right here, lined up with your belly button, so it's right in front of you, and you're reaching in like this, your hands are comfortable, but then to get to the mouse, you're way over here, and the center of the entire keyboard is actually over here. So what we see is people will slide the keyboard over here, so they're lined up with the center of the keyboard, but the problem is, now they're typing like this, so the wrist is in a really awkward posture when they're trying to type. It does bring the mouse in closer so they're not reaching as much, but now it puts their wrist in a really awkward posture. So with the Gold Touch, what's really nice about that is since it doesn't have the number pad, you're not reaching over keys that you're not using, and that brings the mouse in here so you're not reaching nearly as far. So those are 3 typical keyboards or sort of common keyboards that we'll recommend. They do make different styles of keyboards. They make flat ones without number pads. They make some that the 2 pieces completely come apart. They even make vertical ones that have little mirrors on the side so you can see where your fingers are. So if you can think of it, they've probably designed and built these things. But these are the 3 that we'll recommend the most commonly, and they're most readily available, and they'll work for almost everybody. Physical therapist and founder of Sight Solutions, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how to size a mouse for your hand and how to choose a mouse that's going to be functional for you in the workstation. We've had a lot of people ask, what size mouse should I have? Should I have a big one or a small one, or what should I do? So I've laid out a bunch of different mice here, and I want to show you first off how to size it so it's comfortable for you, and second off how to choose between a trackball or a mouse or some of the different options out there. So when you're choosing a mouse, it should fit in the palm of your hand comfortably. So you should just drop the mouse into your hand. You should be able to grab it without having to squeeze your fingers in too tightly. And you should be able to grab or click the buttons and use the scroll wheel without reaching really far or having to contract your hand. So they do make mice in different sizes. This is a travel mouse. For me, it doesn't fit my hand. It's really small. I'd have to use a lot of extra effort to try and grab it like this. And then I can't really easily hit the buttons without kind of crunching up my hand. So this mouse for me would be way too small, unless I'm doing a lot of traveling, in which case it might work because it's less weight and it's easier to carry. But to use on a regular basis, it's going to be way too small. They do have sort of the standard mouse. This is what usually comes with your keyboard or your computer when you get it. Ideally, it's going to be neutral bias, so it's the same shape on both sides. So you can use it in your left hand or your right hand. Again, you shouldn't have to squeeze it too hard, and you should be able to reach the buttons easily without having to reach too far. If you have a bigger hand, you could look at something like this. This is a Performance MX mouse by Logitech. Has a definite right-hand bias, so you can't really use it in your left hand. It should just fit comfortably in the palm of your hand, and then I can rest my hand and very easily click these buttons and use the scroll wheel. There are other styles of mice. Contour makes this mouse. This is a Contour mouse, and they come in different sizes, and you can probably see here they start getting larger. So if you have a smaller hand, you can get the smaller one. That fits pretty well. Like this, if your hand is bigger, you can get the medium size, or if you have giganto hands, you can get the really large one. You want to make sure that it's comfortable and that you can reach these buttons with your hands being relaxed. This one has the scroll wheel over on the side, so you can kind of scroll with your thumb as opposed to wiggling your finger here. So those are some general considerations on mice. There's a whole bunch. Microsoft makes them, Logitech makes them. There's a lot of different companies that make them. A lot of people like using a trackball, and what they've done there is rather than move your shoulder like this when you're mousing, they've flipped it over, and so your hand is stationary and you're just wiggling your fingers. You're using the ball to maneuver the pointer as opposed to moving the whole mouse base. So these come in different sizes. This is a Logitech mouse. What I like here is the ball itself is centered, so you're not reaching from one side to the other. It's right in the center, and there's click buttons on either side. So it's very easy for you to maneuver the mouse and then either press with your pinky or your thumb to right click or left click. These do come in different sizes. So I call this the Super Ball size. This works pretty well. They do have a larger ball, which is more of a cue ball size. I actually like this one a little bit better because you can move more your whole hand like this, where with the smaller ball ones, you tend to plant your wrist and isolate the small muscles here. So I like the larger ball where you can do something like this. This one also has a scroll wheel around the ball. You can see that there. So if you're scrolling through a lot of documents, you can just kind of do this to move up and down on the screen, as opposed to, you know, doing this sort of thing. So those are trackballs. I like the larger ball, and I like the ones with the scroll wheel built in because they seem to be a little bit more functional. One that I don't like, and a lot of people will get, is this one. And what they've done is they've combined the worst of both worlds. So with this one, you would plant your wrist here. It tends to go into a little bit more extension than we like because it's got this shape to it. So your wrist is in more extension. You tend to put more pressure there. And then the way that you operate it is you isolate your thumb and you wiggle it like that. And very quickly you will tire out these muscles. So I like the trackball. I like the large ball because you can move more from your shoulder as opposed to isolating the small muscles of your thumb. There are a few other things that you can think about when thinking about mice. We've had a lot of luck lately with this. This is called the Evolent mouse. It's a vertical mouse. And what it allows you to do is keep your hand in this position when you're mousing as opposed to this extended position. So you're holding it more in this position. You tend to move more from your shoulder and you're not putting pressure into the carpal tunnel here. So these come small and large, and they come in the right and the left hand. We saw one woman who was left-handed. She had a right-handed mouse, and so she was trying to click with her thumb, and that obviously didn't work. So they actually do make a left-handed version so that it fits your left hand, and you can use it that way. And again, you're taking pressure off of the carpal tunnel and the nerves here. The last thing I wanted to show you briefly is the roller bar mouse. And what they've done here is they've incorporated the mouse into this bar right here. And so you roll and slide this to move the pointer on the screen. And what that does, it fits right up against the edge of the keyboard. So you would type here, and then when you mouse, you're mousing from here. And you can click by pressing the central bar, scroll from here, or you can program these buttons to be single or double click. So here you're typing and mousing, typing and mousing. The advantage there is you're not reaching out over the number pad to get to the mouse. Everything's kind of in this central location. So if you have limited space or if you have shoulder issues, you bring everything in so it's not as hard to reach. So if you have any questions about which mouse would be best for you or how to use the mouse that you have, please give us a call at 925-377-0199 or check out our website, which is siteergonomics.com. Thank you.